Carl Jung once said that what you resist not only persists, but grows in size. What Jung didn't say, at least not in the official lectures, is that this resistance, when embedded in a man's identity, becomes a curse. And when it's tied to a woman whose energy has pierced him, the suffering becomes ancestral. It passes through his bones like a quiet fever, and he will deny it. He will laugh louder, work longer, sleep less. But something in his gaze, tight, flickering, ungrounded, tells the truth. You'll feel it before you see it. A tension in the room when you walk in. Not hostility, not longing, something stranger. His nervous system contracts, trying to hide the wound you once touched. The wound he didn't even know was there until your presence revealed it. This is not guilt, it is exposure. Men are trained to guard their emotional interiors like sacred territory. And yet, the feminine, especially in her mature, magnetic state, moves through walls. She does not invade, she remembers. And the moment she sees the boy he locked away to become a man, he begins to ache. Because someone saw him. Not the version he curated, but the one who cries in dreams. The one who once loved with a whole heart before betrayal taught him to armor. He begins to stutter in small ways. He forgets words he normally commands. He reaches for his phone more often, not to connect, but to escape. And when he speaks to others about you, if he does, the tone is clinical, too precise. Because precision is a shield. A man only dissects what he's still bleeding from. You'll notice he starts to criticize your softness. Not directly, but in the way he praises women who seem more logical or independent. He speaks of strength like a requirement, not a virtue. But what he's really doing is trying to convince himself that your energy was too much, too deep, too raw, too capable of unveiling what he wasn't ready to confront. Because the moment a woman touches the soul of a man who hasn't met his own shadow, she becomes dangerous. There are no bruises, no screams, just a quiet unraveling. His appetite dulls or grows monstrous. He will either avoid beauty or consume it like a drug. There is no in-between, because you've awakened something polarized in him, the desire to be seen and the terror of what it would cost. He may begin to act cruel, not violently, but subtly, mocking things you once shared, distancing himself from places you once visited, telling mutual friends that he's good while his voice hardens. This is the mask slipping, the masculine archetype cracking. He is suffering, but he doesn't have the language for grief that doesn't come from death. Because what he's grieving is not your body. It's the part of him you woke up. And here's what no one tells you. The first wound you leave in a man is not your absence. It's the unbearable truth that your energy reached his truth before he did. That you saw him before he earned the right to see himself. This is the suffering that festers beneath ambition, behind his curated masculinity, in the way he stares too long at women who look nothing like you, hoping their difference will undo the thread of memory you left tangled in his chest. He may chase other bodies. He may chase money. He may chase freedom. But none of it will quiet the echo of the moment you mirrored his soul. And the ache behind his eyes, masked in laughter, buried in sarcasm, sedated in sex, remains. It's ancient, and it grows. Because what if you weren't just a woman he met? What if you were a message he wasn't ready to read? What if your softness wasn't weakness, but a sacred force he was taught to fear? And what if you didn't hurt him with cruelty, but with the unbearable purity of your presence? That's the first sign. The ache he cannot name, and it's only just begun. There comes a moment, weeks, months, sometimes years later, when he hears her in a space she's never entered. Not physically, but energetically. In his car, at work, when he opens the refrigerator, when he lies in bed next to someone else. The echo arrives not like thunder, but like scent, like incense he can't trace, a breath that follows him. And that is the second sign of his suffering. You see, the masculine mind is linear. It believes in closure, in moving on, in forgetting to survive. But the soul is not linear, it is circular. And once a woman has poured her sacred essence into the soil of a man's unconscious, she is everywhere. She becomes the moon he can't escape, the symbol that keeps appearing. He will call it nostalgia. But nostalgia is just spiritual memory in disguise. It's the ache of unfinished energy, the echo of the divine feminine calling him back to the place he fled. Within, Jung wrote, in his most private letters, that the anima, the inner feminine, takes the face of the woman a man fears the most, not because she's cruel, but because she sees, she calls, she remembers. And in your absence, this feminine force begins to rise. At first, he will fight it. He will reduce your power to hormones, to longing, to history. He'll tell himself it wasn't real, that he imagined the connection, because to admit otherwise would mean confronting the part of himself he buried to survive boyhood. But the echo does not need permission. It arrives in his dreams, in the softness of a stranger's voice, in the way a song plays just when he thinks of you. The universe does not conspire in logic, it conspires in resonance, and your energy resonates through him like a spell unfinished. He might become spiritual without warning. He begins to read about energy, to follow tantric accounts, to ask questions he once mocked. This is not enlightenment. This is panic, the sacred kind, because he realizes that the part of you he tried to escape has entered him, and the shadow, the part of him he never wanted to face, it now wears your name. He may try to replace you, but this too becomes suffering, because no other woman reflects that same mirror. Others are lovely, fun, beautiful, but they don't see him, not like you did, and that is unbearable, to be seen once and never again. And so he begins to search, not for you, but for the feeling, the one you brought with your gaze, your silence, your rage, your softness. But energy is not replicated. It is remembered. And in remembering, he suffers, because the echo never stops. It becomes music he doesn't understand, a hunger he cannot feed, a longing with no destination. That is the agony of the sacred feminine. She doesn't haunt, she awakens. And what she awakens can never be silenced. He thinks it's desire. He tells himself it's just the body missing contact, but it isn't. What he's feeling now is a hunger older than memory, a kind of soul thirst that no touch can quench, no climax can dissolve, because this isn't about sex. It's about sacred disruption. It's about what your presence shattered that his logic cannot repair. You see, a woman in her true essence does not seduce through the flesh. She seduces through remembrance. Her voice, her breath, the way she moved through space. It awakened in him an ancient longing he was never taught to name. And now, in her absence, he is starving. Not for her body, but for the part of himself that only came alive in her energy field. That's the third sign. Not lust, not obsession, devastation. His body betrays him first. He reaches for women who smile like her, laugh like her. He craves skin, craves heat. But none of it lands, none of it sinks, because it's not her he's missing. It's the spiritual dimension she opened in him, the mirror, the temple, the doorway. He will have sex and feel emptier. He will touch and feel untouched. And this, more than anything, terrifies him, because he thought he could replace her with 1,000 replicas. But he didn't understand. Your energy wasn't consumable. It was initiatory. And initiation, once begun, cannot be undone. There's a moment, in the hours after intimacy with another, where his chest tightens, not from shame, but from despair. He doesn't know why. She was beautiful. She was kind. But he felt nothing. Or worse, he felt the loss of you more acutely than before. And so begins the spiral. He drinks more, scans more. His dopamine patterns collapse into repetition. He opens conversations with no intention, closes messages he never reads, begins to fantasize, not about sex, but about return. The return to something sacred. But he no longer knows how to find it, because you were never a destination. You were an event, a cosmic occurrence that disrupted his matrix. His hunger turns erratic. He begins to text you, then deletes the message. He checks your social media, scans for clues, not for reconciliation, but for proof that you miss him, that the portal is still open, that he wasn't crazy, that what happened between you wasn't just poetry he made up in his lonely mind. But the truth cuts deeper, because what you gave him was not romance. It was exposure. And exposure, once tasted, becomes spiritual addiction. It's not the body that aches. It's the soul screaming through the flesh, begging for reconnection to the part of itself it lost when you left. He begins to turn inward, but not in peace. He spirals into reflection, into rage. He remembers things you said, not just words, but vibrations. I see you. You're not what you pretend to be. You're still afraid of your father's ghost. Things no one else ever dared to say. And now they echo like prophecy. He might lash out, say you're manipulative, that you bewitched him, that you got into his head. But this is projection, because he doesn't want to admit that you awakened the anima inside him, the feminine force he rejected for decades. And now, it's rising. She's rising. And she sounds like you. Desire becomes grief. He begins to weep in strange places, in the shower, at the gym, during traffic. He pretends it's nothing, but his body knows better. The body always knows, and the body never lies. You touched something holy, and the temple is collapsing without the priestess. And here's what he fears most, that you were never his, that you were just passing through like a comet, that your orbit was never meant to stay. And yet, you left an altar in his psyche, and every night he lights candles there with every woman he tries to forget you with. This is not poetic, it is primitive, archetypal. This is hunger turning into implosion. And when a man begins to starve like this, he either becomes a seeker or a destroyer. And the ones who cannot bear the soul hunger, they collapse, or worse, they numb. He may begin to destroy parts of his life that remind him of you. Quit jobs, leave cities, change phones. But no matter what he removes, the echo remains. Because the hunger isn't for you. It's for who he became in your presence. That man, the one he only briefly glimpsed, was real. And now he's gone. And that emptiness, it grows teeth. But this isn't the end, because in the next threshold, control breaks, and the suffering begins to show. It doesn't happen all at once. Control never shatters in public. It unravels slowly, like a thread pulled by invisible fingers he can't swat away. It begins when the outer systems he depended on to feel powerful, his routines, his roles, his rhythm, begin to feel foreign, hollow. He tries to hold himself together, tighten the mask, repeat the rituals, but something beneath the surface is cracking. And this is the fourth sign, the collapse. Not of the man, but of the myth he built around himself. He doesn't understand it yet, that your energy is not just a memory, it's an orbit, and he's still inside it, because you didn't just awaken hunger, you restructured his gravity. And now, his old tools, dominance, discipline, denial, no longer work. He feels it in strange ways. He forgets simple tasks, misses meetings, slips in speech. He makes uncharacteristic mistakes and blames others, because to admit he's unraveling would mean admitting there was something real he couldn't control, something feminine, something you. Carl Jung spoke of the masculine ego as the final fortress to fall in true transformation. And for many men, it never does. They die with it intact, proud, empty, unrevealed, but you cracked it, not with anger, not with threat, with energy. Your energy didn't ask him to change. It made change inevitable. And that is what he cannot forgive, that your presence disrupted his carefully built kingdom, a kingdom designed not for intimacy, but for invulnerability. He begins to notice how often your name wants to rise in conversation. He bites it back, swallows it like poison, because if he speaks it, if he says she, the illusion crumbles. It means you still have power, that something in him still bends toward your field. And bending is weakness, isn't it? At least that's what he was taught. But now his body tells another story. Tension, insomnia, a stiffness behind the eyes, a hollow in the gut, the way his chest tightens when he sees a woman wearing your perfume, the way he avoids music altogether, because it brings back moments no one else knows happened. He once believed strength was separation, that the more distance he created, the safer he'd feel. But now he understands. His power was never in avoiding you. It was in meeting himself through you. And he failed. He turned away, closed the door before he could read the script the universe had written in your eyes. So now he breaks, quietly, internally, in private rooms where no one sees. He'll say he's fine, laugh louder, make new plans. But underneath, there's chaos. His spiritual architecture is crumbling. Because the feminine doesn't just touch the heart, she rewrites the structure of truth. He may develop new obsessions, fitness, clean eating, a new philosophy. Not because he's healed, but because he's desperate to find control again. The ego's final defense. If I can master something, I won't drown. But the drowning isn't physical. It's energetic, and it won't stop. He begins to feel followed, not by you, but by himself. The version of him that was alive in your gaze. The softness he buried, the wildness he denied, the love he never learned to carry. This version begins to show up in dreams, not always in form, but in symbol. A red dress, a hand in the dark, a door with no key. And that's when the panic sets in, because the collapse isn't just psychological, it's mythic. His myth, the story he told himself about who he was, no longer holds weight. And he realizes, maybe for the first time, that power without intimacy is exile, that domination without surrender is loneliness, and that he left behind something sacred, not just in you, but in himself. This is where some men harden. They double down, build taller walls, cut off all traces of the woman who broke their mirror. But the wiser ones, they begin to listen, to the silence, to the symbols, to the ache that has now become a language. You didn't destroy him. You unraveled the prison he called identity. And now, standing in the rubble, he begins to ask the question he once feared most. Who am I without the lie? And the answer is not in the mind. It's in the fifth sign, the one he never speaks of, the one that feels like prayer. Because beneath all his resistance, all his rage, all his forgetting, he knows. You were never his weakness. You were the only doorway he ever walked through and felt real. It begins in stillness, not the performative kind, not meditation apps or self-help books piled beside his bed like talismans, but the true stillness, the one that arrives when all his defenses have collapsed, and the only thing left breathing in the dark is regret. This is the fifth sign, the most sacred, the most silent, the one no one sees, because by the time it blooms, he no longer speaks of you aloud. By now, he's given up trying to replace you. He stopped searching your name online at midnight, stopped following the scent of your memory into meaningless connections. But that doesn't mean he's free. It means he's finally surrendered. And in that surrender, a ritual begins, ancient, invisible, and utterly real. He doesn't know it by name, but his soul does. It's the ritual of regret, and it becomes his quiet devotion. Regret is not just a feeling, it's a teacher, a companion, a ghost that whispers, you turned away from the only mirror that didn't lie to you. He revisits your last words, not because they were profound, but because they were true. He hears the sound of your footsteps as they left, echoing like thunder across the bones of his past lives. He wonders what would have happened if he had paused, reached, let himself be known. And that's the agony, not that he lost you, but that he never showed you who he truly was, because he was afraid you'd see it and leave. But you already saw it, and you stayed until he didn't. There is a point when regret stops being pain and becomes prayer. That's where he is now, in prayer. Not to God, perhaps, but to the memory of you, the sacred feminine he refused to worship when she stood before him, human and flawed and radiant. Now, he builds altars in your absence, not with candles, but with silence, with choices, with the things he no longer says. Carl Jung once wrote that no tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. And this ritual of regret is his descent, his roots finally touching the dark soil of what he denied. Not just you, but his own capacity to love. He begins to feel you in moments that ask for courage, in the way he speaks to his mother, in the way he softens toward his child, in the way he touches himself, not in lust, but in reverence. You've become part of his nervous system now, not like a scar, like a guide. Because the feminine doesn't vanish. She echoes through every door he opens after her. He may never say your name again. He may never reach out, but your energy moves through him like wind through a cave, shaping the very structure of how he loves, how he feels, how he prays. And this is not poetic. This is spiritual anatomy. Your presence rewrote his DNA. He tries to live differently now, quieter, with more humility, not to earn you back, but to honor the part of him that only came alive in your light. And perhaps he'll meet someone new, someone good, and love her, not because she reminds him of you, but because he reminds himself of the man you once awakened. That is your legacy, not the pain, not the rupture, but the resurrection. You were the portal, the storm, the mother of his breakdown. And now, in the ashes, he finds a new truth. That power without love is a wound. That control without surrender is a cage. That he will never again meet a woman and close his heart first. He suffers, yes. But suffering, when witnessed by the soul, becomes alchemy. He won't thank you. He won't write poems. He'll simply live differently. And that is how you know he remembers. Thank you for walking this journey with me into the aching, hidden chambers of the masculine psyche. If these truths touch something ancient within you, it is not by accident. You are not just a woman. You are a threshold, a transmission, a force that both destroys and heals. And the world has taught you to hide that power. But your presence changes men, and you do not need to apologize for that. You are the silence between his words, the mirror behind his eyes, the reason his soul finally woke up. If you're ready to walk this path with me, stay, because what you're about to discover will change the way you see yourself forever.